It's pretty amazing how a single, deeply personal choice can completely change the course of history. Today, we're diving into exactly that. A story of forbidden love, a king's impossible decision, and the incredible twist of fate that put a young woman who was never meant to rule on the British throne for 70 years.
Think about it for a second. When you picture a queen, who comes to mind? For most of us, it's Elizabeth II. She became this global icon, this symbol of stability. But here's the wildest part of her story. She was never, ever supposed to be queen. Her life was on a totally different path, until one event changed absolutely everything.
To really get the magnitude of this story, we have to go back to the beginning, back to a world where Princess Elizabeth was destined for a much quieter life, way out of the spotlight and far from the pressures of wearing the crown.
Okay, so take a look at this. In 1926, when Elizabeth was born, the path seemed totally set in stone. Her grandpa, King George V, was the monarch. The heir, no question, was his oldest son, Edward. Elizabeth's dad was the second son, the spare, as they say. That put little Elizabeth at third in line. But honestly, nobody thought it mattered. The assumption was her uncle Edward would get married, have kids, and push her further and further down the line of succession.
And for the first 10 years of her life, that's pretty much how it went. She, her parents, and her little sister Margaret had a surprisingly normal and private life for a royal family. The whole plan was for a life of minor duties, not preparing to lead an entire nation.
But then, the unexpected happened. A deeply personal choice, a love affair involving her uncle, would set off a constitutional crisis that would change her life and British history forever.
So in January of 1936, the crown passed, just like everyone expected. King George V passed away, and his charismatic, popular son became King Edward VIII. On the surface, everything looked fine. The succession was secure. But behind the palace walls, a conflict was brewing that was about to shake the monarchy to its core.
So here's the dilemma it all boiled down to. On one hand, you have the king's duty. See, the monarch is also the head of the Church of England, and back then, the church absolutely forbade remarrying after a divorce. The government flat out told him that if he married Wallis Simpson, they'd all resign. It would be chaos. But on the other side, there was Edward's heart. He was madly in love with her, an American who was in the middle of her second divorce. He was backed into an impossible corner.
So faced with this impossible choice, Edward made a decision that sent shockwaves across the entire planet and kicked off a chain reaction nobody could have seen coming.
Get this, his reign lasted less than a year, just 325 days. That is a stunningly short period of time. It really shows you just how serious this crisis was. He'd been preparing for this role his entire life, only to give it all up in under 12 months.
And so he did it. On December 11th, 1936, he formally abdicated. He renounced the throne. This was a massive, unprecedented move in modern British history. He chose love over the crown.
This really sums it up, doesn't it? The choice was that stark. There was no middle ground, no compromise that could possibly satisfy both his heart and his duty as king. In choosing Wallis Simpson, he had to stop being king, period.
But see, a decision like that doesn't just affect one person. It completely blew up the quiet life of his brother's family, throwing them into a spotlight they never wanted and a duty they had never, ever prepared for.
Elizabeth's father, who suddenly became King George VI, was the total opposite of his brother. He was a shy, quiet family man who famously struggled with a severe stutter, which you can imagine was terrifying for a monarch in the new age of radio. He was never raised to be king. He didn't want the job. And all of a sudden, the full weight of the crown was on his shoulders, right as Europe was sliding towards another world war.
Just look at how fast this all went down. In one single year, the unthinkable happened. Boom, her grandpa dies. Boom, her uncle becomes king. Boom, her uncle abdicates. Boom, her dad is now king. And just like that, a 10-year-old girl named Elizabeth finds her entire destiny has been rewritten. She is now first in line to the throne.
So that quiet family life? Yeah, that was over. Immediately, her education was completely overhauled. She started intense lessons on constitutional history and law. She was studying religion with the Archbishop of Canterbury himself. Everything from that moment on was about one thing and one thing only: getting the accidental heir ready to be queen.
Now, her father's reign, though totally unexpected, was incredibly steadfast, especially through the dark days of World War II. But the immense strain took a toll on his health, and that led to the final step in Elizabeth's unbelievable journey to the throne. In February of 1952, while she was on a royal tour in Kenya, 25-year-old Princess Elizabeth got the news. Her father had died in his sleep. In that single moment, a world away from home, she stopped being a princess and became Queen Elizabeth II, beginning a reign that would go on to last for 70 years. You know, years before she became queen, on her 21st birthday, she made this incredible pledge on the radio. And that promise, it just hits different when you realize she was pledging her entire life to a destiny she was never born to have, but one that she accepted as her duty without question.
And that leaves us with this huge, fascinating question. It's one of history's great what-ifs, isn't it? One man's choice not only gave Britain its longest-reigning monarch, but may have changed the entire course of the 20th century. It's just a powerful reminder of how a single, personal decision can have consequences you could never imagine.
Hey, if you enjoyed this look at a major twist of fate, you should definitely check out our Unusual History Events playlist for more stories just like this one. And for more explainers that break down interesting topics, make sure you subscribe to Notebook Summaries. Thanks for watching.